Hiker Jay here. This week we're going to be installing the Rough Country winch plate for a Jeep JK. Now I'm opting for a winch plate because you might be like me and you don't really want to do a full bumper replace. As well as I really like my bumper. It's an Oscar Mike version of a Jeep JK and it has the gunmetal gray bumper and also grille. Everything matches, so I want to keep that look. I kind of like the classic look. A couple other things that we're going to be doing is my version, the 2013, requires me to move the vacuum pump. So we're going to put this bracket on and move the vacuum pump back a little bit so that this can set on there properly. And I opted for this winch plate comes with an option to get shackles. So the shackles are going to sit right about here mounted in, and then you'll have these shackles that you can put on. Now they come with like silver shackles, but I have these white and black ones. I kind of like that kind of stormtrooper color combo for mine, so I think they'll look pretty sweet on there. We're going to check them out. I'm going to share once they're on my concerns about them, but I went with them anyway. It wasn't super expensive to just get that extra anchor point that you can use to pull somebody out. And of course, because we're doing a winch plate, we're going to mount a winch to it. I've got the Rough Country Pro 9500 that I'm going to put on it. It's not really a review on this, just going to be part of the install. I'll probably do a review on this after I use it a couple times. I've got some trees I want to pull on the property, as well as winter's coming, and I'm sure I'm going to get stuck to track it. Real quick before we get into the install, if this is the first time to my channel, thanks for stopping by. If you could hit subscribe, that would be awesome. I put out new videos on outdoor gear and such every week. And as always, all the links to the products that I'll be talking about will be down in the description down below, so you can check them out there, because yes, I got the Rough Country plate and the Rough Country winch, but I've got a couple different shackles and things, so you can see the specific ones down there. Now, let's get into this install. Now, for taking off the bumper, two things you need to do first is take off the wind guard, which is on here, which I haven't had on for quite a while. It's held on through here with these plastic screws that you undo, and then you can take that piece off. And the other piece is the plastic skid plate that goes down here as well too, will be attached up here. And you'll need one of those plastic tools or a screwdriver or something to pop that off. So I don't have those original kind of dust brush wind guard on there. I took them off a while ago when I did some work underneath here and haven't put them on. So you're gonna have to do that first. So now that we got the wind and brush guard off, the bumper comes off kind of easy. It's basically you have to disconnect your fog light, and then there's a cable running to the other one that's kind of connected on here by a plastic thing. You're gonna need to pop that off so that whole harness stays loose. And then there's 4 bolts on each side right here behind this coming from that way. The thing that you're gonna probably wanna have is a wrench that can bend and articulate, because it'll just make it a lot easier to get back in there. And I'll show you that in a minute as we pull these 4 off. Now, one thing too is to make sure that you keep like 1 screw on this end and 1 screw on that end super loose. That way when you're working on the other end and it comes off, this whole thing doesn't fall on you until you're really ready to pull it off. Then you pull those screws off and then you can pop it off. So let's get to pulling those screws. Do have to unhook these. Basically, you'll do this, you'll push that to get from there. So I'm over on the side with the vapor pump now, and I wanted to point out that I'm using a 3-inch extender on my socket here, which works out really well, because if you use the 5, you're going to be stuck between the bar and the vacuum pump. So make sure you have a 3-inch extender and also one of these ratchets that kind of articulate back and forth. That'll help you a lot on this top part. All right, now I've taken the last screws off on both ends. For this part, I got help from my sons because I want them to pull it out. I'm going to show you where all that wiring is. So go ahead, guys. Now just slowly just off and spin it and hold it right there for me. Now you can see how I've unhooked these, but you still got these plastic hooks in here that need to be disconnected. So you just want to pop those out like that, and then they'll be able to pop back in and hold that whole chain of cables together.
Wait, can I go in?
Yeah, you're all set. So here's all the nuts that came off of the back of the bumper here, and they do have these plates. This triangle spot actually goes to the top. So I lay them out exactly how they came out in the bench, so that when I put them back on, I'll be able to put those plates right back on there where they belong. All right, now I got the bumper upside down on the bench here. Now what I need to do is I need to take out these 2 bolts right here, and the 2 bolts down there so that I can swap out. Right now I've got the little tow hooks there. You can see they're moving. They will be swapped out and replaced with these here, which will then hook into the plate instead of having the tow hooks. And that's why I went with the D-ring holders, because I wanted some type of anchor point on top of my bumper, because these will be gone. All right, there we go. There's your little crush cones. That's kind of interesting. Okay, all right, let's switch out those tow hooks. Basically, I'm just pulling out the old tow hooks and gonna put the new brackets in. All right. Slide these guys in here. The old bumper. Back in place. Here's your original bolts here, and then we've got the anchor points right here that we're going to hook the actual platform to. Pretty sweet. So now I'll put these 2 back in and the 2 back down there, tighten her up, and then we're ready to start putting hardware on the Jeep itself. At this point, we got to address the vacuum pump because it's got to be moved back. So I've got the bracket. First I got to take off these 2 bolts here, get it away from there, cut this old bracket off, and then we'll put the new bracket on. Now this is a 10 millimeter. I do not have a deep well socket, so we're gonna go old school for a little bit and then use the socket after that to get these off. Make sure you hold on to these because you're gonna need them again. All right, I figured something out after I actually cut these off. So in the instructions, it looks like you just cut this off and this off, but actually what they're saying is this whole bracket needs to come off. So you need to cut it off here and here with a cutting tool, take it off completely. Reason being, if you were to take and mount this piece that's going to hook to the plate, it's going to be a distance away, and then none of this stuff will line up. So you have to install this first, then the actual vacuum pump plate onto this once this is installed. So we're going to take a step backwards, and I cut those off on mistake, but hey, you learn from my mistakes, right? All right, so you're definitely going to need a cutting wheel to get through these and cut them off. This back one, once I cut this one, actually, I bent it back and just used the Sawzall to cut that side. So not too bad, but make sure you take this plate off. Now we're gonna be able to put this piece on here properly, all mounted in, and then we're gonna take our bracket for our vacuum pump and hook it in right there once we have this all installed. Now, you could prep your vacuum pump like I did. So I basically put it on, screwed it through. I did put the screws going down because I wasn't sure going up if they would protrude and hit anything when it comes to the actual winch plate. So next step before I go on to mounting these brackets on here is to paint all this exposed metal because it's just gonna rust anyway. So just got some Rust-Oleum, figure I'll hit it with it. Just an extra step. Don't need to do it, but why not protect it a little bit from rust. So now we need to put these brackets on, and what you can see is they have the two bolts that go through the front here, the 2 go here, and then there's 1 down here. So we're gonna set this one in here loosely until we get everything fit just right here, and then we'll torque it all down. It takes a little bit to get that set, but you can get your fingers up there. Kind of a pain in the butt spot. Not sure. All right, so I am using a 7/8. I can fit right down this channel here and get on the nut right there. And then I can take a socket and ratchet this one on. So one thing I noticed here is like nothing's lining up, right? So I started to snug that up, but this is gonna be all off when I try to put pieces through. So I had this idea. I've got this extra part here, the old tow hook, right? So I could put it in here and have it all stay in place, tighten it right down, and then it should be all set. So I'm gonna loosen this back up and then put this, set this so that it's nice and snug and the holes are all lined up. All right, so now our lines are more or less lined up to take the screws. The nice thing is about the next piece that goes on here that they do shimmy around, so I think we'll be able to get it in place. Now let's switch around and do the other side with the vacuum pump. I get all this to fit nice and tight and in line with those bolts. So now I can go ahead and tighten it up, making sure that this all stays nice and snug. One thing I gotta do too is make sure this guy's up here so we can get aligned. I think I'll just see if this bolt will go in there. There we go. I'm gonna put that in and just set it in there right now, so that way that stays aligned too. There's a lot to get all right on this one. This thing is not long enough to make it down there with this bar here, so it has a bit of a design flaw, but I just put some tape on it to be able to reach down there and actually get to it, because I dropped it multiple times trying to feed it through and get it to where it needs to be. So this is not the best way to do it, but it's gonna get me to where I'm actually gonna be able to screw it in. So I got it on there. Now I'll just tighten it up. But that was kind of a pain having to actually put a piece of tape on there to get it there. But we got it now. We'll tighten it up and we'll move on. All right, so those are mounted. I want to see how well they match up to the plate before I go ahead and put the bumper on. Let's see. Match up pretty well. I do like that they're oval, they're not circles, so you got a little play in there to be able to make it work. See if we can get these guys to line up. Actually, that went right on. I went and grab my bolts. I just want to get a bolt on each side so it doesn't slip off. I can't believe it matched up so well. So I put this bracket on here, the two new bolts. I'm going to tighten those down, get the outsides nice and tight first. So this is a little hard to show down below, but this will not go back on because you're replacing it with this bracket, and it basically goes up too far over on there and won't actually set in there. But this is actually serving as this piece holding it in anyway, so you're kind of just replacing this piece with that. So your insides, you're going to want to not use this spacer. Definitely use it on the outside like I did, but now I'm doing the insides, just going to go with the bolts. All right, got them nice and tight. They do have these little rubber plugs in here to protect the threading, so you want to pull those out before you actually put the plate in. But we're going to mount our winch before we do that. One last step before you get all excited here and leave this. Make sure you go underneath and hook back all your wiring back into your fog lights. Lay it out the way that it was before. Go ahead and plug your lights in, because that will help you. Well, it's probably pretty dark. I'm not sure you can see very well, but it'll help you figure out where to put all the other pieces back in. Not sure if you can see this, but they do have a hole for this one, which is kind of cool that they do that, to put that one back into. So the way that these line up is you drop a washer in here and then run your bolt up underneath and then thread into it. So I'm just gonna turn this up on its side and do that, and then actually put the rollers fairings onto here too, just so that's all set. And then we will bolt it onto the Jeep with the actual shackles. Pretty exciting. Interesting. Huh. So these won't actually fit through here. It's not cut properly. So much for rough country compatibility. I do think I heard that you could take and have to cut like a quarter-inch, half-inch drill and maybe drill that out. So that is what I am up against here. But I think I'll mount it to the vehicle and then I'll do these. All right, moment of truth. Setting the plate in. All right, line up the plate. Now all I have to do is put the piece for the extra clips. Now the bolts, two go in the back, one goes in the front. I might end up plasti dipping them, just because I think the silver and metal and all that stuff doesn't look awesome on here, so I might just plasti dip, but that's all right. So I'm gonna go put the other side on, and then we'll torque these down. All right, got the other side on. Now I'm gonna go with these. Now these thread right into the brackets that we put in, and they had bolts attached to them, and those bolts have paint on them, so the other one over there was kind of fussy to get on, but these are going on just fine. But I'm gonna go back and forth and put them all on kind of evenly, so it doesn't just like torque a little bit. One thing about these shackles, they do have rubber bushings, but this is so wide, I really can't get a bushing through it. So maybe we'll loosen up or something, but as you can see, it's basically tough to get a shackle on here to begin with. That one took some persuading. But what I'm wondering about with this style is that you can't pull something from this side because it would be rubbing over here, but I think it's fine to pull anything coming from this angle. So the fact that there are two on here will help me be able to have some anchor point on the front of the Jeep. All right, I could not go to bed without having this fairing on and having it all set up. So I do have the wiring back into the Jeep, but I haven't actually set it all up and run it yet. But mainly this review was for the plate that would mount a winch, as well as the shackles. Now this is what I'm talking about with the shackles. You see, if you put a rope, it's gonna rub across here. So you'd have to go, you know, and anchor it out this way. So that is the Rough Country winch plate. And I will just say that a couple things. Make sure you cut that bracket off right if you have the year that needs that bracket. I think it's 2012 up. You definitely look at the instructions to see if you even need that bracket to move that vacuum pump back. But otherwise, really the only thing was how to cut that I cut it right, and then the holes for fairings not being big enough. Otherwise, the install was not bad at all. It helped having the boys take the bumper off. But if you have any questions, just let me know, and I put a link down to all the products down below in the description so you can check them out there too. So till next time, just remember, life's a hike, so hike happy. Go get stuck, because now we got a winch. It's going to be a fun winter.